All right, everybody, we have finished with the geography of Latin America. So if you think about it, we've covered Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. We have covered the geography for that entire area, which we refer to as Latin America, or I should say, not everything in the Caribbean is part of Latin America. But we've done Latin American geography. If you thought, wow, I thought it was going to be longer, you got to remember, when we did Europe, Europe was an entire continent with a lot more countries than South America has. So it takes a lot longer to do Europe. So it took 4 weeks, I think, to do Europe. We only did 2 weeks for Latin America, and now we're moving on. So we're moving on to government, and we're going to take a look at the governments of Mexico, Brazil, and Cuba. And this video is just going to be a quick overview. We're going to cover, okay, what type of government does each country have? Who's the leader of the country? What are the term limits? And we're going to just quick overview. We'll get into a little bit more detail in some later videos. But right now, quick overview followed by our assignment at the end of the video, okay? And we'll also take a look at a few sites just because, hey, it's fun. Hey, what's the point of doing geography if you don't get to see a little bit of the country as well? So, Mexico, I don't mean a little bit of the country by looking at the map. But we have the Mexican flag, so really cool design with the eagle killing the snake in the middle, standing on the cactus. So when you get to see it up really close, it's a really awesome design. I shouldn't say cool because cool deals with temperature, and we are trying to use good grammar. All right, Mexico City. Now, if you ever thought, well, Mr. McGee says 25% of Mexico's population either lives in Mexico City or around Mexico City, ta-da! This is Mexico City. That's it. Ginormous. That's not a word. It is a gigantic city. It is huge. All right. A lot of times when you look at the top 10 cities in terms of population, Mexico City is normally in the top 10 for cities around the world. Gigantic city, very beautiful city. Again, 25% of Mexico's population lives either in Mexico City or right around Mexico City. All right, Mexico's government. So this is good in some respects because we need to review some terms that you may have forgotten. So, Mexico has a representative democracy. Now it says presidential here. I'm not going to refer to presidential every time. But just remember, we have presidential in parentheses because on the milestone, a lot of times it'll say presidential democracy even though nobody really uses that term in the real world. So just in case you see that on the milestone, you know that it means representative democracy. So Mexico has a representative democracy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what is a representative democracy? Now, hopefully you are screaming from your couch, oh, I remember, it's because it says democracy, which means the people vote, in other words, rule by the people. So we know the people rule by voting, if Mr. McGee could talk. So the people rule through voting. But since it's a representative democracy, we know that the people vote for the individual person. They don't vote for the political party. Hopefully you remember that. And you remember that if you had a parliamentary democracy, that's where people voted for the political party instead of the person. But key word being democracy, you know, is ruled by the people, and the people rule through voting. Here's the president of Mexico. The president of Mexico is Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. He was elected in July 1st, 2018. Now, it's not unique, but you don't see this a lot. You can only serve one term as president of Mexico, but it's a 6-year term. So you don't get to serve 2 terms like here in the U.S. A president can serve 2 terms. Each term is 4 years, but he can serve up to 2 terms. Some countries, there are no term limits. But they have a term limit of 1 year, but you get to serve 6 years. So the next election in Mexico will be in 2024. On to Brazil. So Brazil, by the way, nice flag. Ordem e Progresso. By the way, I apologize to all Portuguese-speaking people because I'm sure I did not pronounce that exactly correct, but it means order and progress. The stars here, kind of like if you think about the stars on our flag, the U.S. flag, each star represents a state. Well, each star represents a state in Brazil. So there you go, Brazil's flag. Now, this is just nice to see. We should all remember that 80% of Brazil's population lives along the coast, And we can see just from the fact that you've got a lot of these major cities, and notice where they're located around the coast. Very few are located, especially Amazon, and even in the interior. You have Brasilia a little bit towards the interior, but most of your major cities are along the coast. Brasilia. So there's Brasilia, very nice city. I have no idea what this is. This would be something to look up. One student asked if it was an egg. No, it's not an egg. All right. Rio de Janeiro. Now, even though Brasilia is the capital, the two most popular cities that most people know, the two largest cities, are going to be Rio de Janeiro. So, by the way, this is kind of the iconic picture of Rio de Janeiro, Christ the Redeemer statue on top of this gigantic hill overlooking Rio de Janeiro. And then you also have Sao Paulo. So Sao Paulo is the rival city to Rio de Janeiro. But these are going to be your two largest cities in Brazil. These are the two probably most powerful cities. The only reason Brasilia has some power is just simply because the government's there. But in terms of economics, it's Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. Brazil's government. So Brazil has a representative democracy. So we already said representative democracy is where the people vote for the person, not the party. Brazil also shares power federally. Now, you probably will have noticed that that's one of our vocab terms. That will be one of our new vocab terms. Hopefully you've already taken the vocab quiz if you're watching this video. So, federal means some power is with the central government, some power is with the state governments. So remember those states of Brazil? So some power is with the state government, some with the with the central government. So power is shared. Now, for a time, Brazil went towards the direction of socialism/communism. So from about 2003 all the way to 2018, they went through three leaders, but it was all three of these leaders were very socialist in their policies. Now in 2018, that changed. So Jair Bolsonaro was elected on October 28th, 2018, and they elected him because he was anti-socialist in a lot of his speeches and a lot of his policy. So they changed away from socialism in 2018. He promised to end corruption in the government. So this guy, Jair Bolsonaro, is the current president of Brazil. I believe he's up for election in 2022. Cuba. Again, remember I said this is going to be very quick because it's a simple overview. So we got Cuba. Ladies and gentlemen, the map of Cuba. Remember what we said before. Most people are going to live in urban areas. When you live on a small island, right? Cuba's not that large. Most people, there's going to be some people who live in rural areas, but most people are going to live in urban areas because there's just not that much land available. Havana. All right, so Havana makes a very dumb song, but it makes a very beautiful city. Okay, so Havana, it's a very beautiful waterway. It's just nice. The colors, everything. Havana's a very pretty city. And yes, that did rhyme. Unfortunately, even though Havana is a very beautiful city, totalitarianism is the government system of Cuba. Now, how many people remember? How do you remember totalitarian? What does that mean? Look at the first 5 letters. Total, as in the government has total control of the country. The people have no freedom. So there is no freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, right to bear arms, all that kind of stuff is gone. So Cuba, totalitarian government. Totalitarian governments have an autocratic system. So if you remember, autocratic means rule by one person. All right? So rule by one person is autocratic. Any government that's, you say, oh, it's ruled by one person, you know it's a dictatorship. Because that rule by one person doesn't mean, oh, like a prime minister or president. It means there's just one person who controls everything. That's what autocratic means. So you know it's a dictatorship. The dictatorship is run by this guy right here, Miguel Diaz-Canel, dictator of Cuba. And when you have a dictator, just like when we learned about Hitler or Stalin, dictator for life. So this guy has become the dictator. This guy is Raul Castro. He was dictator for a while. Fidel Castro is a name that most middle school students know. He was dictator for decades and decades in Brazil. Fidel Castro's dead. Raul Castro stepped down. Miguel Diaz-Canel is now the president of Cuba, and he's continuing the same totalitarian and the same communist economic system in Cuba as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to Cuba in the future. Now, that is the end for us. Your assignment, if you look in the module, you'll notice that I put a question document. It will probably say something like Mexico, Brazil, Cuba, questions. Open that document. There's 5 questions that you need to answer based on the information that we have here. Okay? So the first 2 questions are fairly easy because all you have to do is look at the information in the PowerPoint, and yes, I will link this PowerPoint to the module as well. So if you look at the PowerPoint and look at the information, you can answer the first 2 questions. Questions 3 and 4, they're based off of how you answer 1 and 2. And then question 5, you're gonna have to use your brain, okay? So question 5 isn't based on any of the information here, you just have to think about it, all right? By the way, just to let you know, question number 1, there are 2 possible answers. Either one of them are correct, all right? Again, if you're confused as you're doing it, stop in the conference, talk to me, I'll do everything I can, all right? Take care, guys, all right? Email me, by the way, if you have any questions and we're past conference. Take care.